In today's video, we're discussing the possibility of a huge trade between the Islanders and the Canucks involving Bo Horvat, plus a couple of interesting names on the Arizona Coyotes. Jacob Chychrun's not the only name to maybe watch here as we get later into the season, plus a huge milestone night for Alex Ovechkin hitting 800 career goals, lots of other NHL roster injury updates, and a signing of an RFA player heading overseas. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, today we're recording here from Disney's Animal Kingdom Lodge in Orlando, Florida. Behind me here in our, just off our deck, there is like a Savannah Safari type atmosphere. So don't be surprised if you see like a giraffe wandering around behind me here in the background. It's quite possible there are some animals out there now. I'm not sure if you can see them all too well. I tried recording right actually a little bit closer out on the patio here so you can get a better view of the animals and behind me for better scenery, but there seems to be a lot of noise and stuff out there and just wasn't real sure about how good the audio would turn out. I didn't want too much of a distraction there, but don't be surprised you see some wildlife behind me. Now, on to today's news. There's no news from the NHL waiver wire. All is quiet on that front. We do have some injury updates from around the NHL. The Detroit Red Wings have placed defenseman Olli Mata on IR, so he's going to be out for a little while. And they've also recalled forward Elmer Soderblom. Of course, Soderblom had a good start, was part of that huge line of the Red Wings with a couple of his younger teammates, and then unfortunately suffered an injury. Once Soderblom was ready to come back, the Red Wings decided to send him down to the American League to get a little bit of reps in before recalling him, and he's now been recalled back to the NHL. The Senators, of course, as I mentioned yesterday, had some scary injury news. We got a little bit further updates on top centerman Timmy Stützle. Stützle right now is not going to be as serious as it originally looked, or at least that's what they're hoping for, and that's what they're reporting right now, saying it's looking like it's going to be about week to week. So hoping he's only going to be out for a week to 10 days. He is officially on injured reserve now. But Stützle essentially left the first period of the last game they played against Anaheim Ducks and didn't look good. It looked like to be a very similar type of shoulder injury that we've seen with Shane Pinto, Josh Norris, last year with Colin White. I swear these young Senators centermen seem to be cursed with getting shoulder injuries. Just can't catch a break at all, but this looks like Timmy Stützle might have caught a break. They're saying he's only going to be out for a short time. They're calling it a contusion, so there's no structural damage right now for the shoulder, which is good. So it shouldn't be too long. The Sens may have dodged a bullet there. They have called up forward Jake Lucchini, who's been doing a tremendous job at the AHL level and had a real good training camp. Certainly was fighting for a spot near the end. If they wouldn't have signed Tyler Mott, wouldn't have been shocking to see a guy like Lucchini and maybe get a roster spot from the start of the year. Of course, Mott also got hurt in that game. He's going to be out for a little bit too. I don't have as much details on his injury, but Lucchini will take Mott's spot on the third line. So they're also without Norris. They're also without Joseph. Obviously they're banged up right now and they're trying to get through. But they've been playing some good hockey lately, which is somewhat good news for them. So let's hopefully can kind of get through this latest spell of the injury bug here in Ottawa. They also called up defenseman Dylan Hetherington as well. I'm not sure if he'll get in the lineup. He's probably there more so for an insurance type of situation, and he'll be there as the Sens do play tonight as they do battle with the Montreal Canadiens for the first time this NHL season. Now, staying with the Senators here for a moment, of course, we know that they did not come to terms with RFA forward Alex Formenton before the December 1st cutoff, so Formenton is not eligible to play in the NHL this season. So he has now officially signed a one-year contract for the rest of this year in the Swiss League. He's actually going to be playing with a former Senator as well, Philip Schlappick. Obviously, Schlappick spent many years in the Sens system, mostly playing American Hockey League games, but did get some NHL action before heading back to play in Europe. So it'll be interesting to see what happens here with Alex Formenton. We know that he was on that 2018 World Junior team. A lot of people have kind of drawn conclusions, probably unfairly so, that he was involved with the investigation here of the sexual assault that's being investigated by London, Ontario police and the NHL. Still no word on when we're going to find out more information on that. I would think it should be close to wrapping up. It's been ongoing now for some time, considering that was brought to light back in the summertime, but the Senators will still hold the rights for Alex Formenton. I believe it's for another year or two. I think it's 2 years that they'll hold his rights for. So we'll have to see what the future holds for him. I don't think we're going to have any kind of clarity at all until the investigation is released. And if he is implicated and did something and was involved, then obviously he may have other issues to worry about than where he's playing hockey. So I don't know what's going to happen here, but certainly a situation to watch moving forward. But for now, he's going to play in the Swiss League for the rest of this season. Alexander Ovechkin certainly hit a major milestone last night, hitting 800 career NHL goals, which was a tremendous accomplishment. He's now really close to Gordie Howe for number 2 overall all-time. Gordie Howe, of course, had 801. Still a ways to go here at 894 to catch Wayne Gretzky for the all-time record, but considering how Ovechkin's playing, yes, he's still not really slowing down that much, and he still has enough time on his contract. With his age, I really think Ovechkin will break the record. It's a matter of time, in my opinion. But if he can, as long as he doesn't run into any major injury issues or anything, that we can't predict here, I would think that the odds of Ovechkin breaking the record in the next probably 2, maybe 3 years is probably reasonable. I mean, if he has another 50-goal season, then it's going to be sooner. But even if he has like 3 30-goal seasons, he'll get there too. So it's certainly very reasonable, even if his goal totals do slow down. But certainly going to be fun to watch and see if he can do it or not. And of course, another update from the NHL Board of Governors meetings. Gary Bettman, commissioner of the NHL, was asked again about the possibility of either expanding the playoffs or adding a play-in round, or where things sit with that. And he doesn't seem interested at all. It's been something he's completely dismissed for the last number of years, as it's been brought up numerous times. And I do think to some degree discussed at NHL Board of Governors meetings, which is interesting because we've seen pretty much all of the other major professional sports expand their playoffs, and it's a wonder why Bettman doesn't have any interest in doing so. I mean, I understand a lot of teams make the playoffs, and certainly 82 games is a long stretch of time to kind of get everything settled on who's going to be qualifying and not. But at the end of the day, a lot of things and most decisions in sports, at the end of the day, they're a business, boil down to money, and more games means more ticket revenue. And it's just that simple. Money talks. And to have a play-in series instead of maybe you make the wild card spots be expanded for an extra couple teams qualify, and maybe you have 4 wild card teams instead of 2, and they each have like a battle, 1 versus 4, 2 versus 3, or something to that effect, and play in and get into the playoffs that way. And Bettman wants nothing to do with it by the sounds of it. However, Athletic and TSN writer Pierre LeBrun recently wrote about this in an article, and he polled 12 NHL general managers, and all of them were in favor of that type of structure and format. So it really goes to wonder why, if that many NHL executives are interested, why they can't even get Bettman to at least even talk about it. It's like he completely dismisses it completely. I mean, I'd like to know what everybody's thoughts and opinions are on the playoff format. I would like to see an update. Even if they don't do this, I personally would like to see them go back to the 1 versus 8, the 1-8, the old conference standings, the way they used to do it, instead of doing the top 3 and then the 2 wild cards. I don't know. It's just, you're seeing a lot of the same matchups through the divisions now, and it's just time to change things up so you can get some different teams playing each other, some new rivalries going. It could make a big difference just to shake and spice things up, in my opinion. It just makes it more interesting. But I guess we'll have to wait and see if there's any more appetite. But right now, Bettman is shutting down all possibilities of changing things up. But it is, I believe, in the CBA that the NHL and the NHLPA do talk about the playoff format every so often, but it doesn't sound like we're going to get any changes anytime soon. Now, as I mentioned as well in the trade section of the video, the Arizona Coyotes are going to be a very interesting team to watch. I know Jeff Merrick and Elliot Friedman recently discussed them here a couple of times between the podcast and the Jeff Merrick radio show, talking about Clayton Keller for one. Is he an untouchable player? Merrick commenting about how he's having such a nice, quiet season. Obviously being in Arizona sometimes doesn't get a lot of national attention, but he's putting together a real nice year and certainly leading that club in a lot of the major categories. We do know there's a group of players on that team that is pretty much a guarantee to be traded. You're looking at Shane Gostisbehere as being a really good deadline acquisition on the blue line. Possibly Nick Ritchie, if somebody wants to have some size and potential scoring forward addition to the power play up front. He's done well down there compared to what he did previously during his time with the Leafs or the Bruins. Richie's playing better there than he has in a while, so, increasing the chances. We know the Chychrun trade eventually is going to happen because he does not want to be there, and the team has already been committed to trading him for a long time. They just haven't gotten the asking price they're looking for anywhere close. So at some point, that's going to take place, but certainly another name that Merrick and Friedman discussed might be the goaltender there, Vejmelka. I mean, could he not, generate some interest? I mean, he is having himself a really nice season and really keeping the Coyotes in a lot more games than you think they might have business being in. I mean, the Coyotes were expected to be a team, and don't get me wrong, it's not like they're doing phenomenal here. They are near the bottom of the standings, but I think a lot of people thought they'd be even worse than what they are. Like, it really seemed like going into the year that they were trying to put together the worst case scenario roster that they could to really bottom out and make sure they get a high overall draft pick in the 2023 draft, which is, a pretty deep draft class and some top high-end game-changing talent near the top of that draft. And at this point, well, Vejmelka is certainly keeping them, like I said, making them games more interesting when he's between the pipes than a lot of us probably expected to happen. So at the end of the day, he signed for 2 more years at $2.75 million. That might be a very interesting player to watch. I don't know that the Coyotes are going into this year, leading later in the deadline, thinking, geez, we got to trade this guy. But, we've seen in the past, recent past, they want to trade players to get good returns for the future. They don't really care how many games they win right now. They're working for a future date. They're trying to get a new arena in Tempe. They're more worried about 2, 3, 4 years down the road than they are today. So if they get a good, offer on a goaltender like this, then that's certainly, obviously something that is, going to be something that we might be caught off guard and might actually see happen. But I do wonder what the asking price would be should teams approach the Coyotes about that type of trade. I'm not sure that they're going into this looking to trade him, but teams are always looking for goaltending help. He's having a good season. He's got a good contract. You have to think interest is going to be there, and it makes you wonder what might happen. But with Chychrun, there's certainly trade talk and rumors are heating up around this player as well. Merrick and Friedman have discussed him a few times here recently. And at this point, we don't really know exactly what teams are in the mix, but teams are certainly kicking tires for sure. Now, the New York Islanders Hockey Now website and Stefan Rosner is reporting that the Vancouver Canucks and the New York Islanders are engaging in some trade conversations around Canucks captain Bo Horvat, and he outlines how he feels what's a reasonable trade. So I wanted to discuss that. I mean, that could be a huge move for the New York Islanders, as I've talked about before, and I think most of us would agree. If you follow the Islanders and you watch them at all, especially the past, not just this year, but dating back at least the last couple of seasons, it's clear that they're missing a top scoring forward. They need to have some more offense. If you look at their 2 playoff runs where they came really close to making the Stanley Cup final, the big difference when it mattered most was being able to get just 1 or 2 more goals. They need somebody who's a little bit more of a game breaker than what they have on the roster, another offensive weapon to add to that mix. I mean, you've seen in Game 7 loss against the Lightning, for example, where they just couldn't get one past Vasilevsky. They need more firepower. They could also use a defenseman. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And some more defensive help if they really want to go on a deep run will always be a good idea, and it's certainly not as bad as it could have been, given the fact that they did manage to get a little bit younger this year. Of course, they don't have Green and Chara anymore, playing such a more, because they played way too much, right? And they were aging, didn't have the abilities that they used to, and it just wasn't working. But of course, adding Romanov into the mix has been nice for them. Pelech is hurt right now, which is a bit of a problem, but hopefully he won't be out too long. And, fourth on there. But the blue line, as much as I would want to add before the deadline if I'm them, it's not a glaring big issue in my opinion. I think the scoring needs to be more of a priority, and Bo Horvat could solve that. I mean, I don't think they're going into this saying we need a centerman, but he is a goal-scoring centerman, so you can never have too many centers, in my opinion, and you need to have more of a more offensive firepower. It's just that simple. So at the end of the day, the article discusses a trade package that could include a couple of different ways they could do it. One, the first round pick in this year's draft would almost certainly have to be involved, and they could look to add prospect centerman Atu Ratu, who's been basically was a draft steal for them considering how he fell in the 21 draft, but he's had a pretty good development here. A pretty good-looking prospect two-way centerman, which could be very intriguing to the Canucks. Certainly, not to say he's going to be Bo Horvat, because I don't think he will be. It's way too early to say that. But he would play a similar style of game. He could be a middle six centerman with good defensive abilities and ability to put up some offense too. Another option they have which might be more preferential to the Canucks, would be to look at two of their defensive prospects, which would be both second-round picks in recent drafts. They have Samuel Bolduc, taken in 2019, missed a lot of time last year due to injury, but has rebounded nicely, putting up some good offensive numbers in the American Hockey League this year. And then they also have 2022 second-round Swedish defenseman Kalle Odelius, who's playing over in Sweden. So, if you include both of those guys in a first-round pick, to me, that's probably enough. You get two good-looking prospects and a first-rounder. Now, the only issue here, of course, is that as of right now, the Islanders wouldn't have the ability to take on the full contract of Horvat without shedding some money. But if they do it closer to the deadline space they do have right now is plenty. They wouldn't need any money retained, because it's been noted and reported on that Vancouver was not overly keen on doing that. But as of today, they have around $2.5 million in space, but their deadline space is over $10 million that they could add. Of course, he doesn't make anywhere near that, so they'd still have the option of adding on the blue line as well. That's assuming nothing else really changes drastically here with their cap situation between now and then, but it really shouldn't. And preferably, if they want to do something ahead of the game, they could look to move the Josh Bailey contract, which I know is something that Lou Lamoriello has focused on and has tried to do a few times, but it's been tough. The asking prices were a little bit too much, given the fact that he doesn't really give you the production consistently anymore like you would want for that type of contract. But it is, something they will have to look at doing if they want to make a move sooner than later. But of course, I don't know that Vancouver wouldn't want that. They're looking for the flexibility here, so I think they're going to want the first rounder and the prospects coming back. If there was a player on the roster that had to go the other way to do it sooner than later, they could consider a Beauvillier being included. I'm not sure that would be a high preference for them, considering he is one of their younger forwards, but at the same time has been struggling with consistency issues as well. If they did get Horvat, they could easily take either Barzal, or Nelson would have to go to the wing, but that's not really an issue. We've seen Nelson on Barzal's wing a few times occasionally and during games, especially if they need, they're playing trailing from behind or something like that. You could play Nelson on the wing with Barzal and Wahlstrom. Your second line could easily be Horvat with Anders Lee and either Palmieri or Beauvillier with the other forward. So either you could put, let's just say you go Beauvillier, for example, then you put Palmieri on your third line with Pageau and Parise. That's not a bad top nine. It really isn't. Of course, Bailey would come out of the mix there. You keep your fourth line together, your identity line, and go forth from there. But overall, I think the Islanders could certainly make it work. This reporter seems to think that the Islanders and Canucks are having conversations and there's heavy interest there. So we'll have to watch this scenario closely and see what happens. But certainly let me know your thoughts on that potential trade. Does Horvat make a good, would he be a good fit with the Islanders? Do you see it? Does it make sense? Give me your mock trades. And of course, I especially want to know your comments on the playoff format that we discussed earlier. So let me know your thoughts on all of today's news down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.